humans. Such fascinating creatures.
The voice murmurs, dripping with a mocking reverence.
Filled with righteous desire, seething with indignant envy, consumed by endless greed. And yet...
A pause lingers, heavy and deliberate.
They are so predictable in their own exquisitely flawed way.
The figure shifts, sinew and living flesh, melding grotesquely with the carved throne of bone and rot. Muscles half fused with the grotesque construct strain and squelch as it leans back. The sound is a sickening symphony of tearing tissue and grinding cartilage. A wet thump echoes as a skull, still slick and glistening, as though freshly flensed, tumbles from the mound of remains. It drops into a pool of bubbling bile, the surface rippling with a corrosive hiss as the last traces of mortal identity are devoured. The reality surrounding the figure refuses to hold, writhing and distorting like flesh stretched too thin over an ever-shifting frame. Shapes pulse and dissolve, rejecting any singular form as though the world itself recoils from its presence. Endless, pitiless darkness stretches in all directions, broken only by a river of blood that cascades across the sky in a grotesque parody of a celestial vein. The figure tilts its head, an unsettling motion, too smooth, too fluid, twisted parodies of ears straining to catch the distant, anguished wails. Faint but unyielding, the chorus of countless souls trapped within the crimson torrents echoes through the void, their suffering a sweet symphony to the monstrosity that lords over them. The creature languidly extends a single clawed finger toward the sky, a slow, deliberate motion that drags with it an oppressive stillness. The tip pierces the fabric of the heavens, and with a languorous pull, it draws down a thin line of blood, a scar across the firmament. The crimson trail pulses, viscous and alive, as the creature's talons trace intricate patterns through the air. The symbols twist and contort, writhing like serpents as they take shape, carving impossible geometries into the void. Rips in reality tear themselves into existence, shrieking with the anguish of dimensions torn asunder. Beyond the sundered veil, it sees them all. The lowly humans, downtrodden, angry, their souls thick with bitterness and longing, ripe for conversion. The expression that spreads across the creature's face is not one of compassion or pity, but of raw, unrestrained hunger. It drinks in their essence from afar, inhaling their despair like a predator savoring the scent of wounded prey. It can almost taste them, the bitter tang of hope corrupted, the sweetness of desperation curdling in the air. It yearns to reach out, to caress their fragile minds with promises whispered in the dark. But it cannot. Not yet. Certain rules must be followed. Certain traditions, older than time itself, must be observed. A creature such as this does not simply walk into the materium. No, it must be invited. The veil must be parted willingly by trembling hands, by minds eager to receive what should never be welcomed. Some of its kin prefer the crude simplicity of violence, blood spilled in obscene rituals, the carnage of war tearing a gateway wide enough for them to slip through. Others are masters of manipulation, bending mortals to their will with whispered lies and forbidden knowledge. But for this being, there is something far more delicious in desire. It savors the exquisite torment of longing, of mortals seeking it out, willingly, unknowingly. Their hearts heavy with yearning for power, vengeance, or forbidden truths. To be sought, to be desired, that is the sweetest nectar. For when they come willingly, their souls are offered without resistance, ripe for the taking. And so, it waits, ever patient, ever hungry. With a delicate wave of its elongated sinewy fingers, the focus of the tear shifted, its vision narrowing like a predator locking onto prey. The scent of decadence wafted through the rift, a stench so thick and cloying that it drew the creature's attention as irresistibly as a bloated carcass draws a swarm of eager flies. Excess. It was a siren's call that resonated through the fabric of mortal existence, a fundamental flaw woven deep into the core of humanity. No matter how vehemently they denied it, mortals were creatures of unrelenting indulgence, and excess, by its very nature, always led them closer. They danced upon the precipice of damnation with reckless abandon, cavorting with powers far beyond their comprehension. Their minuscule impudence, their fragile audacity, was as laughable as it was predictable. They believed themselves untouchable, blind to the consequences that lurked just beyond their sight. They copulated, driven by lusts that knew no restraint. They tortured, delighting in the suffering of those weaker than themselves. They celebrated, feeding their egos with lavish displays of power and privilege, and above all, they desired. Desire in its purest, rawest form, a gnawing hunger that consumed them from within. And all such paths, no matter how winding, led inexorably to its master. Yet, above the rabble, there were those whose souls resonated with a decadence so profound that they eclipsed all others. The nobles, the self-styled rulers of the administratum aristocracy, swollen with arrogance and gluttonous pride, they were the epitome of indulgence, their souls steeped in a marinade of unchecked desires. Their hearts, blackened by greed and ambition, were seasoned with the sweet tang of corruption, each sinful impulse enriching the flavor. To this creature, they were the choicest morsels, delicacies worthy of savoring. Long, pale fingers twitched as it stretched toward them, a subtle yet insatiable yearning etched into the movement. It traced the air as though stroking the delicate veil that separated its realm from theirs. The barrier between realities quivered under its touch, as if eager to give way. Oh, how it longed to pierce that thin boundary, to render it asunder and feast upon the decadence within. But not yet. No, not yet. The invitation had not been given, and so it waited, ever patient, ever watchful, ever hungry. The creature whispered its name into the warp, a sound that slithered through the void like poisoned wine, sweet, silken, enticing. It carried the promise of forbidden ecstasy, a siren's song that curled through the fabric of existence. To hear it was to be ensnared, to feel its venom seep into the soul long before one realized they had been caught. The net was cast wide. Delicate, invisible threads spun with malicious precision, seeking out any who might heed its seductive call. And so, it watched, it waited, it observed. One caught its eye. A sensuous creature, a woman of unrivaled beauty and boundless arrogance. Her very existence an affront and a temptation. She radiated purity, her heart a bastion of devotion to the hated usurper, a paragon of faith, untouched, untainted, perfect. Her devotion was as flawless as her form, and that was what made her irresistible. The creature's thoughts became consumed by her, an obsession that burrowed deep into its mind. It fantasized about her, lingered on the thought of defiling that purity, of watching her unravel in its grasp. She was not like the others. No, she was more, so much more, and it wanted her. To twist such a radiant soul, the mere thought was intoxicating. To take something so pure and drag it screaming into the depths of depravity, to corrupt her body, her mind, her very essence, until she knew pleasures beyond mortal comprehension, until she begged for the unholy ecstasy only its master could bestow. It would take her to such unimaginable heights where her mortal pleasures would pale into insignificance against the searing, exquisite torment of its touch. She would feel everything, every indulgence, every forbidden desire, until her soul was stretched so thin it could no longer withstand the rapture. A low, velvety whisper echoed through the void, reverberating with a terrible longing.
Come to me, my delicate flower. Let your petals open one last time.
The words dripped with yearning, heavy with promise. The flower visibly flinched, a fleeting shiver of instinct stirring beneath her perfect exterior. Her head turned, soft blonde tresses cascading over her shoulder in an unnecessarily graceful motion, an unknowing display designed to capture the eye. But to the creature, that movement was more than mere beauty. It was invitation, a superfluous, unconscious gesture that drew it in, ensnaring its desire even further. She was everything it craved, a perfect caricature of its master, radiant and unblemished at first glance. But beneath that fragile facade, she was ripe. A soul so capable of corruption that the mere thought sent a shiver of anticipation coursing through its essence. To corrupt her would be its defining act, a masterpiece, a symphony of seduction and desecration so exquisite that it would echo through the annals of darkness for eternity. She was not just another soul to be claimed. No, she was a gift. A divine offering to be laid upon the altar of its master's decadence. And once it sated itself on her fall, once her purity was reduced to nothing but a distant, painful memory, it would present her to its master, bound, broken, perfected. Such a gift would not be forgotten. The gift-bearer would be exalted, raised above its kin, bathed in the favor of the Unholy One. The creature spoke its name again, this time to her. A sound that slithered through the warp and caressed the delicate threads of her soul. And then, it felt it. A subtle, almost imperceptible flutter. A tremor in her heart that echoed the creature's own pulse. She had heard it, not with her ears, but deep within, where her desires whispered secrets she dared not acknowledge. A slow, sinister smile curled across the creature's face. It extended its hand, fingers long and pale, curling with deliberate grace. One finger beckoned, a subtle motion laden with irresistible compulsion. And like a marionette bound by unseen strings, the flower turned. Her body moved with effortless grace, her heel pivoting as if guided by a force she could not name. She followed the sound of the creature's voice, her steps drawn forward by the seductive lure echoing within her mind. The creature continued to whisper, soft, insidious words that dripped with longing, desire and profane adulation so potent that it would have melted the minds of any mortal who dared to listen. Each word was a dagger, sheathed in silk, piercing deep into the woman's mind. Yet this power, this intoxicating sway, was but a mere candle beside the infernal blaze of its master's might. And oh, how that creature craved that power, so desperately, so achingly, that its longing teetered on the edge of madness. But that, too, was a path to ascension. Obsession, after all, was its own kind of devotion, and devotion was a gateway to unimaginable power. The words seeped deeper, threading themselves into the fertile soil of her mind. They fed her pride, nurturing it like a poisonous vine, twisting and growing, saturating her thoughts with the intoxicating desire for more. Pride was such a pliable thing, so easily manipulated. And mortals, they exuded it from their very pores, drowning in their own arrogance even as they stumbled toward their ruin. The creature knew this well, and it cultivated her pride with masterful precision. A sprinkling of addiction here, a touch of validation there, until her desires were no longer her own. The creature shuddered, a sudden, almost violent convulsion of rapture. It could feel her drawing closer, her thoughts aligning with its will, her heart beating a rhythm that echoed through the warp. Her mind was no longer a fortress of purity, but a fertile garden where seeds of corruption had taken root. It guided her, coaxed her gently, leading her to a place where her thoughts could truly be alone. A private sanctuary where the last vestiges of resistance would crumble. With nothing but words alone, it drew upon the boundless power of the warp. A whisper, a breath, and the seed was planted. It nestled deep within her mind, taking hold before she could form even the faintest conscious thought of the act. Her body moved on instinct, her hands guided by an unseen force. The flower's delicate fingers traced intricate, forbidden sigils of power upon the smooth surface of her bathroom mirror. The creature felt her will unravel, her mind drifting further into the seductive currents of its influence. And then, her eyes met its. That moment. That exquisite moment where the veil of ignorance was torn asunder, and mortal comprehension collided with the unfathomable. The creature rejoiced in her expression, wide-eyed wonder tinged with the first tremors of desire. Every soul perceived it differently, and it relished in that variance. It was a canvas upon which mortal fantasies painted themselves, a reflection of their deepest, most hidden desires. For some, it appeared as a being of immense power, draped in opulence and excess beyond imagination. To these mortals, power and status were the ultimate aphrodisiacs, tools that granted dominion over others and opened the gates to boundless hedonistic pleasures. They craved what they saw, their souls driven by a hunger to claim that which they had always been denied: wealth, control, ecstasy. And in their blind ambition, they failed to see the price such desires demanded. But others gazed upon its androgynous frame and saw not power but perfection. Flawless, seductive, an ideal lover to beguile and ensnare, a form so exquisitely imperfect that it drew mortals in like moths to a flame. Voluptuous and ethereal, it was a vessel of endless desire, one that offered a tantalizing escape from their hollow existence. These did not seek power, but satisfaction, emotional, physical fulfillment of desires they could not quench on their own. Their yearning was not for dominance, but for completion, for pleasure that transcended the mundane and touched the divine. And the creature? It knew them all. Their desires, their weaknesses, their hunger, and no matter what they sought, power or pleasure, it was always the same. They would offer everything they had for just a taste. Her eyes reflected that same hunger now, flickering just beneath the surface, and the creature's smile deepened. Yes, it had her, and soon she would belong to the creature. The creature rejoiced in this moment, in this truth laid bare. When its eyes met hers, the final veil was torn away, and it understood. What had been mistaken for pride was loneliness, deep, gnawing, a chasm within her soul that no mortal could fill. This flower was one among many, adored, admired, envied, but even among her own kind she stood apart, isolated, untouched in ways that mattered. She had been placed upon a pedestal so high that no one dared to reach her, leaving her stranded, surrounded yet utterly alone. And now, the final sigil was complete. The mirror, once a reflection, became a window, and the window, a door. With a languid, almost reverent wave of its hand, the door opened. The boundary between realms shuddered, then yielded, parting like silk beneath its will. The creature extended its hand, long, slender, and impossibly smooth, its silken flesh gleaming faintly in the dim glow of the sigils. It crossed the threshold into the materium, and for the first time, touched her. Its fingertips brushed her cheek, light as a whisper, soft as the breath of a lover in the still of night. It traced the curve of her face, down the delicate line of her jaw, a touch that lingered with an intimacy that spoke of promises yet to come. She did not flinch, did not recoil. Instead, her breath caught, and the creature felt her heart quicken beneath her perfect exterior.
You deserve so much more, my little flower.
It murmured, the words a gentle caress, a tender promise that seeped into her bones. But this was no mere touch. With that fleeting contact, the creature sampled her mind, tasted her most intimate desires as easily as one might sip from a goblet of the finest wine. And there it was, her deepest yearning. Love. Not the hollow, transactional affection offered to noble suitors as part of a bargain she had no interest in. Not the empty gestures masked as devotion, given and taken as tools in a game she had never wanted to play. No, She wanted to want. And more than that, she wanted to be wanted. Desired not for her status or her beauty, but for who she truly was. A yearning so pure and so raw that it sent a shiver of delight coursing through the creature's essence.
I can give you what you want, little flower.
Each word dripping with honeyed seduction. The creature paused, savoring the delicious sedition in those words, feeling her mind teeter on the precipice.
And so much more.
The promise hung in the air, thick and heavy, weaving itself into the fabric of her thoughts. And in that moment, the creature knew. The seed had fully taken root, and her fall was inevitable. The flower nodded, a simple yet elegant tilt of her petals, graceful, willing and utterly lost. With a subtle gesture, the creature guided her through the door. As it closed behind her, reality fractured. 1,000 years passed in the span of seconds, time bending and contorting to its will. The world around her dissolved, reshaping itself into an opulent ballroom, a realm of impossible beauty where desire and decadence intertwined. She and the creature moved as one, dancing a minuet of pleasure and romance that transcended mortal understanding. They glided across the gleaming floor like artists weaving a masterpiece, each step a stroke of perfection, each breath a note in a symphony of ecstasy. Her senses ignited, alive in a way they had never been before. Her heart raced, pounding in the rhythm with the pulsing power that filled the air. And with every beat, her petals opened, her soul blooming under the creature's touch, fulfilled in every conceivable way. But it was not enough. The creature took her higher, beyond the limits of mortal pleasure, beyond the conceivable and into the extraordinary. She soared, her laughter ringing out a melody of incredulous joy mingling with the soft tremor of something deeper. And then, the descent. She wept. Tears of unfathomable pain streaming down her cheeks, her soul stretched between bliss and agony until the line between them blurred. She hungered, her very essence crying out, and the creature, it fed. It drank deeply, savoring every moment. Never before had it delighted in a meal so decadent, so perfect. The flower twisted in its embrace, her beauty evolving with each passing moment. She was no longer merely a woman. No, she was a rose, her petals unfurling in a bloom of darkness. Little by little, the transformation took hold. Her skin shifted, taking on a porcelain sheen marred by delicate, razor-sharp thorns that sprouted along her limbs. Her golden hair melted, reweaving itself into vibrant red petals that cascaded down her back like a crimson waterfall. She was becoming more. And yet, only when the creature placed an ornate crystal case over her did understanding bloom within her mind. Her perfect reflection stared back, twisted, beautiful and bound. A rose trapped in glass, her petals preserved forever, caught in the moment where agony and ecstasy became one. The rose turned, her petaled face contorted in a rapture so profound it bordered on madness. And then she screamed. But it was no cry of resistance. No, it was something else, something more. It was a song raw and exquisite, a haunting chorus caught between the shuddering gasp of a lover at the peak of ecstasy and the final trembling breath of a dying saint. It echoed through the ballroom, resonating through realms, a hymn of beauty and torment entwined. In that instant, she saw her captor as it truly was. The creature's many eyes shimmered with joy, reflecting her unraveling with the reverence of an artist admiring their greatest work. Its mouth parted, a silent moan of delight escaping as it bathed in her exquisite ruin. Her agony was music, her beauty perfected through suffering. And in the heart of that sacred pain, as her soul quivered on the precipice of eternal damnation, the demon leaned in close, its voice a whisper that slithered through her mind.
You were always mine, little flower.
It purred, the words laced with possession so absolute that they echoed beyond time. And then it laughed, low, soft, like a promise that would never end.